Hello and welcome. My name is Kathy Vines. My business is Clever Girl Organizing. I'm a professional organizer. I live here in Melrose, and I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about downsizing. I'm here as part of the farmers market and working with the Melrose Recycling Committee, and you can visit their booth over there. And we want to get the town excited about the different opportunities that are coming up over the next month to help get rid of things out of your home, declutter, downsize, and make sure you're doing it in ways that are responsible for the environment. We've got paper shredding day and swap day and the citywide yard sale and hazardous waste day coming up. So there's a lot going on this fall. So be sure to visit that booth and find out more. But today I want to talk to you about downsizing, and I know it's something that's on a lot of people's mind in this town, and whether you're going through it right now or you're planning on doing it in the next few months or even few years, I wanted to give you some tips and tricks that we can talk about that'll help you be more prepared and ready to take on downsizing. So first, let's talk about what downsizing really is. When you think about downsizing, obviously the first answer is you're probably going to something smaller. Oops. You're going to go to something smaller, and honestly, one of the things that's a little tricky sometimes with downsizing is you may not know just yet where that next place is. It may be living with a family member, it may be going to a facility, it may be that you're shipping up and going down to Florida into something much smaller, but some of the mystery that goes on during the downsizing process involves the fact that maybe you just don't know where you're going yet, but you know it's going to be smaller. Less bedrooms, less bathrooms, less community and family space, and less storage. Next is an important part of downsizing is that your needs rather than your wants are probably driving a lot of the decisions that you're making as you go forward. And your needs are different today than they were maybe when you moved into this house, whether that's 10 years ago or 40 years ago, your needs are different today than they were then. So really taking time during the downsizing process to think about what's important to you for the lifestyle you have now and for your ability now and for what's important to you now. Factors like safety and accessibility will pay a lot more function as you go through downsizing. Remember, when you think about how you have storage today, it may not be so easy for you to get to the bottom shelves and the bottom drawers or the very top shelf inside that closet. So thinking about how you have accessibility needs in the future is an important part of thinking through downsizing now. This one here is important to me, and I think it'll be important to a lot of you. Downsizing isn't just about letting things go. It's really about making sure you're keeping what's most important to you. What are your real treasures, and how do you honor them going forward? When you're talking about going into a smaller space, your ability to keep what you need and what's truly important to you really becomes your primary goal as you go through this. And so it's making sure that the other things you're letting go of is so that you can continue to honor what is most important to you, either emotionally or functionally. Finally, one of the things I like to talk about is downsizing really isn't just for boomers and seniors. It's not just for what other people are going through in a particular generation. People of all ages are going through, they're decluttering, they're living more with less. They are becoming minimalists. They're moving into the city, into a condo that's much smaller, and all the walls are just windows, which means you can't hang anything on the walls. The things and the decisions people are making to do less and live in less and live with less in the future is impacting generations. So that all sounds easy, but really downsizing is kind of hard. So I want to talk about a number of different reasons why downsizing can be hard to do. The first is, and this is really a reason why people put off downsizing for as long as they do, it's really hard to face so much. Whether it's because your house is full or there's a lot of emotions, it feels so daunting you can't even imagine getting started. And one of the things I'm going to tell you is just get started, but remember, it took you a lifetime to fill this house. You're not going to take care of all the downsizing in just a week or two or even a month. The next one, I don't know where to start. If you don't know where to start, then you're like everybody else that I work with, and even people who don't work with professional organizers. And it really can be scary to say, I don't know how to dive in, I'm afraid that there's a wrong answer, and really the answer is start with something small. Start with something that's, whether it's one shelf of books, one drawer, one set of kitchen utensils, start it, finish it, and see what comes up for you. What are the emotions? What are your challenges? Are you able to focus? But really start small with something that seems manageable and that the decisions are less emotional but more practical, and you'll start to get your groove on. The next one is really talking about just acknowledging that downsizing can involve a sense of loss of the life that you've led here, of the family that you've raised here, of the memories that you've built. Loss is a real factor when it comes to downsizing. I can't give you any secrets on how to get through it, but I just want to acknowledge that it's something that you're going to go through, and making sure you have the support along the way is important. This fourth one, guilt. So much guilt. Guilt comes up in downsizing in a number of different ways. The first is you feel like, oh, but all this stuff is so good, I feel badly getting rid of it. Another one that comes up are things you're giving away or you're letting go of things that aren't part of those other things I talked about, your real needs or your most important treasures, but maybe they're gifts. They're gifts from a family member, and saying, they said, oh gosh, you know, I really won't need this quilt in Florida, but you know, but my daughter gave it to me and I know she spent a lot of money on it. Well, you know, I think the important thing to remember is, and I work with people around gifts a lot, when people give you gifts, they are doing it because they want you to bring happiness, they want it to bring joy, they want you to feel good about it. They don't want to hear that it caused you anxiety, that it caused you grief, that it became a burden for you. If you were to ask that person who gave you that gift, if you knew that this is what it was doing to me, would you want me to keep it? That person's going to say, no, get rid of it. That's not what I wanted for you when I picked that out. And it's okay to say that a gift that served its purpose at one point in time, whether it was for a day of happiness or a lifetime, you can move on and let go of some of that guilt. This next one is starting to get into some of that more emotional stuff that can be really tough. If that fear that if I let go of the things, I'll lose the memories. And this can be when you've lost a loved one, whether it's your parents or spouse or someone else who was close to you, and you're concerned about your past and saying, but if I let go of this item, I'm not going to be able to recapture those memories that are so important to me. And it's important to continue to remind yourself that your memories live in your head and in your heart. They don't live in your hands and in these things. If it's really important to you, take some photos and create a photo album of all the things that you let go of during downsizing that really meant a lot to you. Relive the memory, tell a story, write down the story, but it's okay to let go of the thing and still hold on to the memory. This one comes up a lot, worried about the future. What if I need it? Gosh, you know, I think what if I need it can cause a lot of people, especially people who are very practical and they're good planners and they know, well, I might need this someday, so I'm a little concerned about getting rid of it. We're going to talk about this a bit in the next page on tips on thinking about it, but just acknowledging that some of that, what if I need it, really depends on, well, what's the likelihood that situation's going to come up? And if it did come up, well, could you do something else about it? Is there another option for you to solve that problem without that item? Feeling wasteful? This costs money, this is still good. Talked about it a little bit earlier when we talked about guilt, but that's a sense that comes up saying, well, this is a perfectly good table. It's certainly good. Shouldn't I still hold on to it? It's perfectly good. But the answer is it's not part of your needs, and it's really when you're thinking about critical decisions in the future, letting go of things that still are perfectly good, but make sure they go find a new home. I think being able to do that in a way that's commensurate with your values can really help let go of some of that guilt. Stress in the family. Stress in the family can be so big, and it comes in lots of different flavors, whether it's we're not all on the same page about what my future is going to look like. We have different timetables, we have different styles, everything from I thought my kids were going to want all of my stuff and now it's bothering me that they don't want my things, it makes me feel less valued, to they want everything and they're fighting over it, and now I have to deal with that stress about who's going to get this and who's going to get that. Some of the stress comes in the form of how some of your family members think that they're going to be helpful. Help doesn't come in all great flavors. Some of your family members are really helpful if they're actually not in the room. That's the best help that they can get. So it's remembering that that whole family dynamic can be really tough when you're going through downsizing. Similarly, you know you need help, but you don't know what kind. So that idea that I need help, whether it's physical help or decision making or emotional support or just somebody being able to help set time apart, it's really important to know what kind of help is going to work best for you and where you can get it. And then being clear with that person, you know, this is really what I need from you, this is what would be helpful for me. Honestly, it's one of the reasons why I get involved a lot as a professional organizer, because people know that the kind of help that they need isn't necessarily something they can get from a family member. They need somebody who's a third party. They need somebody who's who's more detached from the situation. I can come in, I can be impartial, I've got great tips, and honestly, sometimes it's the kids of the people who are downsizing that bring me in, because they know that preserving their relationship with their parents is really important. Otherwise, everybody's going to kill each other, and the downsizing is going to take a terrible turn. Fear of not being perfect and making mistakes. You know, again, I think this can be paralyzing for a lot of people, whether you're talking about downsizing or anything else. It's that idea of, well, what if I do something wrong? What if I get rid of something and I regret it? What if there's a way to do this and I've done it wrong? And it can be so paralyzing. It's important to remember that not every decision you make is going to be a tough one. Not every decision you make is going to even have an opportunity for mistakes. And if you need to take some of them a little slower, that's okay. Finally, here's an important part of why downsizing is so hard. It's exhausting. Physical fatigue, you got to keep your nutrition up, you got to stay hydrated, you need some good tunes to be motivated, you can get hurt, you want to make sure you lift with your knees and you're being careful when you're working with objects. Really, that physical fatigue and making sure you're taking care of yourself is an important part of downsizing. So now I've talked about why it's so hard, I want to talk about a couple of different techniques that you can use to help make decisions as you go. And this first one I'm going to do is walk through kind of questions that you can ask yourself when you're trying to make a decision about any one item. On the next page, I'm going to talk about things that are good when you're working with a whole collection. So let's spend here. These are 8 questions. And by the way, I have these written out on a handout for you that you're all going to walk away with today. And they're also available over at the Melrose Recycling booth. And these are one of the sections of the handout that I've included. So the first is, when's the last time I used this? It may have been a while ago, it may have been recently, but you should kind of know when the last time you used it is. And then secondly, going into the second question, how often do I use it? How often have I used it? And how often am I likely going to use it in the future? If you have this beautiful soup tureen that was your grandmother's and you serve Easter dinner every year and you put your famous soup in it, that's fantastic. If you in the future are not going to be hosting Easter dinner because you're in a place that you can't really entertain the way you used to, then maybe holding on to those things isn't so important. Maybe looking to have somebody else hold on to that because they're going to take over that tradition. Maybe that's important. Or maybe you think about number 3, do I own something else that can do this? Just because I have the soup tureen and just because I'm going to continue to host Easter dinner, maybe I have something else that actually works just as well and I don't need to store 2 things because in the future storage is really at a premium. The other part of do I own something else is, can I borrow it? Can I give this to somebody else, or does somebody else have something that if I need it, I'm going to be able to borrow it from somebody else because I'm only going to need it once or twice? Is it in good shape, or does it need disrepair? Does it need repair or replacement? If it's something that's really going to need repair or replacement, think about how important it is to have in your future, and maybe now's the perfect time to get rid of that, as opposed to spending money on repair and replacement. The next one, do I know someone who can get more value out of it than I am or will? This is important when you're thinking about how you're connected to your community, how you're connected to your family, and how you can be able to pass on things and transition them to other people who are going to get tons of value out of it today when you haven't gotten value out of it in years. It hasn't been an important part of your life, your daily life, in a long time, but it could be a fantastic part of somebody else's daily life today. This goes along with the treasures comment I made earlier. Is it something I truly love with sentimental value that just couldn't possibly be replaced? These are those things that if your house is on fire or there's a flood, it's the first thing you go to save, the things you'd be devastated to lose. Remember, this is about how you continue to find what your treasures are, what the things are that are most important for you for the future to make a home for. Do I own it because it represents another version of me, my past, or my imaginary future? The past is an important thing. This can be anything from, well, gosh, when I worked full time, I had a great wardrobe and all these beautiful suits and these beautiful dresses. But honestly, I don't wear dresses all that much anymore, and it's been a long time since I wore suits. But in my mind, I still have this image of what my life was like. Or the future can be anything from physical fitness equipment. I think this is great. I'm going to have this treadmill because I'm definitely going to get in shape. I'm going to get in shape and I'm going to need this treadmill. Or I think it would be fantastic to host a fondue party and we're going to have the whole neighborhood over and I'm going to do this. And the likelihood is you're probably not going to have a fondue party. You probably don't need to hold on to these things or for these imaginary plans. So think through your plans and how realistic are they? And are you setting aside important storage space for things that may or may not happen in the future? And then finally, what's the worst that can happen if I let this go? It's a top question that I ask so many of my clients. What really is the downside to letting go of something? Again, you can think about, could you replace it? Are there other things? But what really is the scenario if you let go of something that you're going to be facing? And if you can imagine that scenario, is that something you can live through, either through finding another way to solve the problem or just being okay with it existing? If there really isn't a bad case scenario of letting go of something, it's a good reason to let go of it. So those are some questions to ask when you're dealing with just one item. What if you're dealing with a whole collection? You need to sort through what you're going to keep in the future and what you're going to let go. And here are 4 different techniques I want to talk about that can be ways for you to approach a whole group. The first I borrowed from another organizer because I love this. It's 3 different categories: treasure, trash, transition. Treasure, of course, again, we've talked about the most important things that you've got and you really need to hold on to. Trash, I can let go of it. I don't know why I've had it all these years. I promise you there's going to be lots of things that fall into the trash category. And then transition. Transition is, it's still in good shape, it still has value, but it's ready to be transitioned to somebody else. I'm ready to donate it, I'm ready to gift it, I'm ready to sell it. Number 2, this goes to the point I just talked about representing a time, a different time in your life, either your past or this imaginary future. I use it, I used to, I want to. I use it is, yep, this is part of my life now and my foreseeable future. I used to is my past. Well, I used to ride a bike a lot. I used to knit. I used to do this and play board games with the grandchildren, but now the grandchildren are older and they don't play board games anymore. And I want to is that sense of that future. Is that future vision of why you're holding on to this item really realistic? Or is it something that's a bit imaginary and creative, but probably not part of your life? The third one, I like this one for a whole connection, especially when you've got like a commodity item. I call it friends, acquaintances, and strangers. This is good for a book collection, all your sweaters, your Tupperware. The Tupperware is the worst, right? So, and this is a great one to use as an example. You know who your friends are when your Tupperware are, right? Your go-to every time you make this one dish, this is absolutely the Tupperware you use for leftovers. And you know your strangers. I lost the lid. I hate this lid, I can never open these, they're always stained, they don't stack neatly with each other. These are the ones that you hate, but for some reason you've kept around in case you have some kind of leftover emergency where suddenly you need to feed the whole neighborhood. It's really easy to see how your friends are going to be your keepers. These are the ones that you really are your go-to and they work for you in the ways that your life needs them now. Your strangers, never liked them, don't need them, actually kind of hate them, get rid of them. The acquaintances are the ones that, well, you know, they're good, they're fine. I use them sometimes for special occasions or for certain situations. And then it's really thinking through, how do I go through these acquaintances, decide which ones I want to keep, which ones are worth keeping, and which ones I can let go of, either again, kind of with that transition. It's time to donate them, it's time to sell them, gift them to somebody else. Finally, another category I like to use for when you're dealing with collections is putting things aside in a time capsule when you really can't decide. And it's important to set limits on exactly how much you can't decide right now. So I talk to people about take 10%. If you really, that last 10% you're just really struggling with on a decision, put it in a bin, put it in a box, label it saying a time capsule, look at again in 2 weeks, 2 days, 2 months, whatever the right answer is for you for your timeline. Put it in your calendar to remind you, because out of sight can be out of mind. And then you come back after you've been doing other downsizing and decide, you know what, I'm much better at making this decision now. I've lived without this for a little while. You know, it turns out I actually don't need this after all. So it's a way of really being able to defer some decisions for yourself, but still holding on to them in, again, a limited quantity and a little bit space. So again, 4 different techniques that you can use today to start going through broader collections of what you own. So you've decided to let go of things, which is fantastic, but now you want to know, well, what can I do with them? Some of these are going to be pretty obvious to you. They're going to be options that you already know, but I thought we could just talk through them. The first is sell. You might have things that are worth some money to somebody. Maybe not as much as you think, maybe as much as you think, who knows? But there are a lot of different ways that you can go and sell items. Obviously, you can have a yard sale. You can do an estate sale. That's where you hire a company to come in and they will sell lots of items on your behalf. People kind of come through your home and pick out things that are available. They get a percentage of money that you earn from it. Consignment. Consignment isn't as big in New England as it is in other parts of the country, but there are absolutely places where you can consign good clothing, where you can consign furniture. There's actually online consignment that you can do, especially for designer clothes or designer bags, things like that. And then online, the other options are certainly online auction like eBay, or selling through Craigslist, or if you're on Facebook, there are a ton of Facebook groups just dedicated for yard sales where people are listing things, they're priced to move. If you've ever been on the Melrose, Massachusetts yard sales, I think we have 2 groups. Gosh, you know, hundreds of items get posted every day there. There's thousands of members, and it's been a great place for people to let go of things in their home and be able to move on and get a little money. Giving is the next category of how you might let go of things, and I broke it out into 2. Giving to people you know and giving to people you don't. Giving to people you know are going to be some of the obvious things like give this to my family, give this to my friends. I have a neighbor who I know well who I think would really love this kitchen table. I know she needs a new one. Or having a party in your house, an invite-only downsizing party. Everything on my dining room table must go. Nobody gets to go home until it's all gone. You know, being able to say, I want it to go to my friends and my family and it's important to me, but I don't need to get money out of it. I just want it to move on. Again, remember I talked about this earlier. Sometimes you think you want to give to somebody who you know and they actually might not want it. Remembering that that's not personal, that just because they're not valuing your item doesn't mean they don't value you. And you should just be clear up front to make sure your assumptions are in line with theirs. Giving people you don't know, again, kind of the obvious things. Charity, donations, places that will take items even if they're not charitable, but they'll take donations. Free Cycle, which is a great community resource where people post things saying, hey, I've got these, does anybody want them? And somebody raises their hand and say, yeah, I'll take them, I'll be over soon. And again, even Facebook groups, we have some Facebook groups that are dedicated towards just giving away things for free. So we've got some around yard sale focus and some just free. The next one is an important one I want to talk about. It's repurposing. And repurposing is one of the core tenets of being able to be responsible with the environment with both reuse and recycle and repurpose. And what I want you to remember when it comes to downsizing is if you're repurposing, make sure it really has function and value in your next life. If this next chapter of yours has a need and you have something that you can repurpose into that, that's great. But so often repurposing is just about having a good craft project. I'll give you an example. You might say, oh, I've got this antique milk can and it's great and I think it would make a fantastic umbrella stand. Well, that is fantastic if you've got the kind of umbrellas that actually go in an umbrella stand, where I know that I have the kind that folds down and put in my purse and is easier for me to carry. Or if you actually have more than one person who comes to your house on a regular basis when it's actually raining. You know, again, now we've set aside room for this milk can that doesn't have a value in the future just because you thought it could be something fun to do. So again, my point is repurpose if it truly solves a real problem or serves a function in your life. Finally, sometimes the option is you have to hire somebody, a haul away company or a junk removal company, and you actually have to pay them to get rid of some of your stuff. And it can be heartbreaking and you hate the idea that you're throwing money away just so that somebody else takes these things. But remember that there are different ways that you can get involved with this. There are some local vendors that I've worked with that are great about, they take all your stuff, but then they try and recycle as much as they can, or they have a consignment store where they will sell things for you. So I think there are ways for you to tackle this without, you have ways for you to tackle it without feeling so badly about having to hire a company to take away things for you. Okay. So finally, I want to close with giving you some ideas and some tools for things that you can do today, that you can start if you are being part of downsizing going forward. So here are 7 things that you can start with. The first is start talking today with your family about your plans. Make sure you're on the same page. Or make sure you're on the same page about timetable and what and when and where and all the things that go into this stressful process. I've mentioned this a couple of times. If you think someone is really going to be taking important things from you, your furniture or keepsakes or heirlooms or this china set or all these other things that you think somebody else wants, make sure you ask. Make sure you test those assumptions before you build plans around them. And again, remember, if they're saying no to them, remember that they're on their own journey. Maybe they're struggling with clutter in their lives. Maybe their clutter is struggling with storage in their life. Maybe they're trying to make important questions about how they live and what they'd be willing to give space to. And remember, you're giving it away just in the same way that they're being able to say, you know what, it's not right for me. Thank you, but it's not right. This one, I think, probably impacts a lot of people here. If you're storing things for others, say your adult children's bedroom is still fully intact, fully with all the same books and the textbooks and the trophies on the wall. If you're storing things for others, give them back. Give them a call and say, time to come get it. You're going to be dealing enough with your own issues and your own things to have to make difficult decisions that you don't want to deal with somebody else's things in the process. So if there's stuff in the attic and stuff in the basement that you've been storing for somebody else, tell them it's time for them to put it in their own home or to get their own storage unit and start taking care of it themselves. Number 4, again, a point I've talked about a couple of times. The most important part is thinking about what is on your must-keep list. What are the things that you say, absolutely without a doubt, I can't part with this. I'm willing to get rid of so many other things except this. If you could only keep 10% of what's in your home right now, what would be on that list? Start thinking about it so that those decisions aren't so emotional when you get to that place. Number 5, just say no to new things. Part of downsizing is actually really slowing down your accumulation. And this includes, as we talked about before, gifts. You can tell your family no more #1 grandpa mugs, no more exotic gourmet ingredients you're never going to cook with. Tell them no. If they want to give you a gift, tell them make sure it's something that doesn't take up space and something you can use going forward and serves your current life. But no more new things. Number 6 is really thinking about how technology can serve you for downsizing in ways it really hadn't in the past. For a lot of you, I'm sure photos and scrapbooks and albums and the photos on the walls, those are a big part of your life now. Thinking about how that moves forward, maybe you're going to use a digital solution. Maybe you can scan photos. Maybe you can do things that are going to help preserve old photos, but give you an opportunity not only to keep them safe, but also to share them with others and share them with your family. So think about how technology for things like photo, old artwork, your kids' schoolwork and artwork, important documents, how that might help you really conserve space but still hold on to what you need to in the future. Finally, my last tip, take before pictures. And taking before pictures is important for 2 reasons. The first is, of course, it's going to be really motivating for you as you go through and say, how far have I come? What have I done so far? Where have I been making progress? And I promise, anything you can do to help reward and motivate yourself to keep going is going to help. The other reason I think before pictures are so important is we all suffer from clutter blindness. We don't really see what's around us because we've lived with it so long. And I'll tell you, if you take a picture just of your kitchen counter and you look at it and you say, yeah, I know what's on my kitchen counter. You take that picture and then look at it again, you're going to say, wait, where's all this coming from? I'd never even saw it before. But when you're looking at a picture, you really see what's in the background. You see what you've tucked away in a nook and cranny. You see what you've just lived with for a long time. So it's a good way for you to help make a more real and honest inventory of what you have and what you're facing. Well, that's what I have for you today. And I hope that this was really helpful. Again, between talking about what is downsizing, why is it hard, coming up with decision-making tools, whether it's about one item or a whole collection, and thinking about how you get rid of things, but also what you can start today. I'm hopeful all of these give you some idea about what to do next. Again, my name is Kathy Vines. My business is Clever Girl Organizing, and I work with adults, families, and individuals to help them live a better life in their home. And sometimes that's with better spaces, better systems, and dealing with their stuff. And I'm hopeful that if you're thinking about looking for some help with downsizing, you'll check out my website, clevergirlorganizing.com, or drop me an email at Kathy@clevergirlorganizing, and I can help you with that. By the way, again, going over the Melrose Recycling Community tent over here is going to give you more tips and tricks and get you focused on all those great events that we have coming up this fall to help you responsibly help declutter your home and move on with less stuff. Thank you very much.